Here I am, diving ever deeper into a simple life, becoming nobody, as Ram Dass described so beautifully as he made the ascent into the abandonment of the body-mind towards the end of life, as he essentially died, as the living call it. Death is, of course, an industry for the living. The death know so little of death, perhaps. They don't even know how to spell it. As the world becomes busier and busier, more and more attuned to the accumulation of information, objects, possessions, property. Every advert on social media is how we can monetize the quieter corners of our lives and find wealth in the simple things. There's lots of inherent good in all of this. Of course, everything belongs to good in the end. It's good to question the pathways by which we come about good or things that benefit us personally. Are we operating ethically? Are we operating in a way that is not just about my story, it's not just about our story, but it's about the story? Are our activities, our undertakings, our efforts, and our clamours for peace and happiness, do they contribute not just to us, but to others? And do they belong to a bigger mind than the usual monkey mind? We check ourselves along the way, we reflect as we move through the path of the dream of being me. And in youth, of course, we are so attached to accumulation and self-image and consumption, and we should be operating out of, we don't have to, of course, but often we are, and perhaps that's what makes it okay, that we do operate out of a need to acquire and to get and to be attached to that egoic mind that is constantly modulating and monitoring its performance in the very moment. This is the nature of the egoic eye, not the third eye, but the eye of the ego with which we see a world through our senses. And the egoic eye splits each moment into good and bad, like and dislike, want, don't want, good for me, not good for me. And it frequently fails to consider others in its view of that. Or perhaps it's overly entrenched, cathected to compulsively considering others, considering the person I'm in front of, how are they perceiving me, how are they seeing me. We all know this sensation, we all know what these feelings are like, and we all recognise the limits of this. Most of us recognise the limits of this, and that's fine. We can find love for the others, we can find compassion and empathy and other attributes that, of course, once more they do come under the cosmology of living in a modern context, in the digital age, in the binary age, in the age of noughts and ones. And it is this very thrust towards accumulation and collection and consumption and self-image for the first half of life that we find it disappoints. We hear people in media, we hear people that have collected vast amounts, generally of finances and possessions, talk about that it doesn't satisfy. Some of these individuals in media are awakening and passing that message back. It would be interesting to have unending financial security in order to reflect back that it doesn't offer that much security. It's different to not having financial security in the first place and being moved through a mechanism that brings us to the point of discovering that actually I don't really need that anyway. This is why we have really interesting tribes appearing. We have the tiny house movement, we have the minimalist movement, we have the simplicity movement, and this is why philosophies and groups and tribes that speak to such simplicity speak to another way, to the way of the world as it is at the minute, as it goes through what appears to be another cycle, another pattern of mass change, as the old mechanisms are brought to their knees, as we discover that our political structures are corrupt to the core, that they don't work, and as there's a movement to conserve all of that breakdown, there's a movement against and for the breaking down of the structures and hierarchies and our politics, and there's a movement to conserve it. But this is a game that somewhat is a broken dance. It's a dance of dualism. It works out of a dualistic mind, an either or quid pro quo mind that seeks to individuate, individualize, and speaks to individualism. And then there's a counter movement. There's always a counter movement. Everything brings its opposite. Everything enables the very opposite of that which it speaks to. So undergirding all of that is a movement towards simplicity, is a movement to move off-grid, is a movement to narrow down the consumption and the consumerism of the world, to bring into our minds and into our hearts and into our lives and into those around us and influence others where need be, ways in which we can find inherent happiness and not material happiness. Excuse me. And so here we are. There's an ever movement towards that for today. I've got here my juice. I've got here my bowl of nuts. And as health has become more important to me out of a health predicament that the body's going through, that I'm observing and attending to, and that has brought me ever fuller into presence and beingness, to find a radically okay foundation with which to allow the body to be worked on by professionals, and by nuts and juices and my red bush tea and my water with a slice of lemon in it. In very simple ways, very calm and peaceful ways of finding happiness in the moments, having been lifted beyond that egoic eye of either or. This is the nature of age. This is what the transformation from the first half of life to the second half of life might offer, is that unless we transform our pain, we will transmit it. But if we allow ourselves to sink deeply into the creative void of that within us, which is keeping us trapped in the patterns and the attachments and the processes for the first half of life, which, as Carl Jung said, they begin to fail, sometime between 35 and 50, 55, but not always. Once those first half of life patterns begin to fail, we are radically moved or not to either continue to try to make those things work that have stopped working, that worked for so long, because we don't know another way, or we don't hear of another way, or we don't hear talks exactly like this one that speak of a different way. Though social media and individuals that do seek to talk in such a way, that do seek to simplify, are carrying this message forward, often by their actions, not just by their words. So, and we can be transformed by those difficulties if we allow ourselves to sink into the creative void and the creative tension of unfinished business and that which needs looking at, if there's anything which needs looking at. We can be lifted beyond that mind that we use for the first half of life into a larger story, into a bigger mind, into the story, beyond my story, our story, and kind of tribalistic notions like that. And we find simple happiness, peace, is the nature of our very being, is a happiness that's been in our pocket all along. Yet we had to undertake the search to try and find it in the external things, or to bring about inner peace by the collection of external activities and belief systems and images that we have of ourselves and relationships and objects and all of that. And we find in a simple glass of water with some lemon in it, in a simple juicing in the morning, and in a clean body, happiness as a way of being. I am empty.